Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all of your sports books and track all of your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You can also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as they're the best account on the platform. Head to the App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire. Download the app.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is the Dawg and Desperado Fantasy Football Show for December 1st, 2023, episode number 18. That's right, Mr. Childs. I got this right. It is number 18. No editing today. Shout out to the gentlemen behind the glass, Mr. Joseph Shea and Evan Lewis. Thank you guys for all you do, and our proud new partnership with WagerWire. Please, if you have not already, go to Google Play, download the app. It's free. It'll allow you to start syncing your bets with all the sports books around, window shopping, checking your ROI, and much, much more. Take a look and scroll down to the bottom. A lot of free plays, a lot of matches from various sports books and casinos. Take advantage of them. And if you're looking for a little flash cash for Christmas, send an email to affiliates at wagerwire.com. Tell them JD from ECSI sent you. Travis, Zach, the rest of that team and community will take good care of you. So without further ado, it's week 13. Desperation time for the regular season fantasy players. Another week to try to crack the millie. So let's bring in the Hall of Famer himself, Mr. Shawn Childs.
What's going on?
Good afternoon, sir.
Reminiscing about the Rainham Dog Track, the good old days when we used to raise hell locally and blow money on the weekends religiously when we were in the single life. And the early 90s to 2000 were a fun time.
Shout out to my cousin, Debbie Souza Garland. Happy Friday, Deb. Glad you could join us. Miss you, love you. Hope to see everyone Christmas Eve. That's the plan. We shall see. Looking at that, Shawn, I would say already I'm a loser because I see the red blanket right there, which is the one dog, and I was famous for keying the one on top with a handful for second and third. So it looks like I would have been burning another ticket there.
Yeah, could be a possibility.
Before we get into the season longs, what a game last night. You know, I talked on our closing bell show, Dallas favored by 9. And you know, you had a banged up Geno. You had a no Kenneth Walker. We know what DK can do. Lockett, the emergence of Njigba. On the other side, Dallas has been putting up 40 burgers the last month at home. A week off after a very professional-like performance against Washington. Were you shocked at the Dallas D yesterday, or was this that sense of urgency must-win for Seattle that just came up short?
The Dallas defense, I mean, I guess they put pressure when they had to, but, you know, the Dallas overall, they played really well at home. They had some games where their schedule has been favorable against weaker opponents. They played the Giants and the Jets to start the season. One side of the game, defense kind of took over, you know. So, you know, their defense has not really been tested other than when they faced the 49ers, they really kind of struggled on the road there, and they got kind of run over, and their offense kind of disappeared. So good to see Dallas on the move. But we did see Dak force a couple balls late, tighter coverage, and didn't get any turnovers, but he had one that was intercepted. But it was obviously a offsides or something, so it was kind of free play. But he showed that he could be suspect in a tight game, which isn't what Dallas fans want to see. They want to see crisp passing. They want them to see the run the ball well. I thought Paul looked pretty good last night. So overall, their defense, against a better offense is not as big of an edge. And Mr. Bland that runs all the touchdowns back got a couple run back the other way against him last night.
The talk all week, and I've been saying, give this 2 weeks, and we could see this flipped. The Philadelphia Eagles 10-1 2 weeks ago, going to Kansas City and win. Last week, rally the troops and win in overtime against the Bills. 3-point underdogs at home against the 49ers, and then travel to Dallas next week, where I think Dallas will be a short favorite. So if San Fran takes care of business, Dallas already has. And next week, San Fran wins, Dallas wins. You're going to see 3 teams, at least 49ers, Philly, and Dallas with 3 losses. And currently the Lions 4-point favorites at New Orleans this week, coming off a loss. Are we seeing the change of the tide as San Fran, obviously the team rounding and forming the team to beat?
Yeah, they look pretty good. And the way Purdy's played really, really well, spread the ball around. They haven't had to throw the ball more than 30 times in minimal games. And they have 3 good receiving options. McCaffrey is a stud, can catch the ball as well. There's a lot to like about that team, but they still have to prove themselves on the road against a good passing team if they can handle it. So it'll be interesting to see if Philadelphia can be a little more active, throwing the ball last 3 weeks. Hurts has had short yards passing in all 3 games. So, but Philadelphia has found a way to win. They're playing at home, and you think they might get knocked off, but who knows if they just come out and they blitz them and take a big lead and force Purdy to throw the ball. And we saw when he played Cleveland earlier in the year in the second half, they kind of really struggled. And when he didn't have a passing window, he was not the same quarterback. So he still has to show a little bit, when he's behind and he has to perform.
Shout out to Big City in the house today. Michael, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Keep up the great work, and hopefully sooner than later, yourself, me, and Sean will be eating lunch and reminiscent of the good old days at the Brockton Bowl on Monday nights, and maybe somewhere down the line we might be able to go on the senior tour and relive those golden memories. Looking at this week, listen, we have this week and next week to get into the NFFC playoffs. You've already had a league where week 12 was it. Playoffs have already started. All the work that we put in June, July, August, drafting, homework, the games start in September. Looking back to where we are today, what would you have done different, or what any swings and misses, and any guys that you're like, man, I had that guy?
Looking back, I mean, like in some spots, I wish I was I think that in the 5th round, in a lot of these high stake market drafts was kind of a dead zone, like, where I didn't like the running backs. Most of the quarterbacks were off the table, and that's where I thought you can get tripped up a lot. I wish I made better decisions there. Even though I took at the back end a lot, I took Kittle, so I ended up with a decent tight end in some spots. Didn't move up the right players, and I think in the 8th round, I got sucked into thinking Michael Thomas would rally, or Brandon Cooks would be better. It's serviceable as a wide receiver 4. He's come on late, and he has helped teams, and he's been playable definitely. Last 3 or 4 weeks. A value, and I played him in all. I have him in 4 spots. And I played him last night. But, ultimately when you're drafting these players, it's you like players and you get used to taking them in a certain rounds. And I could look back and I took Sky Moore and I took Rashee Rice together, figuring to get a piece of the Kansas City offense. And I had Rice rated as the top wide receiver, but he was in the high stakes market, maybe 10th to 11th round pick, where Sky Moore was going earlier. And I didn't end up Sky Moore that much more. It was more for the best ball. But if I had Rice just in that slot where he went, I would have definitely got Dell, who I liked a lot, who in the best balls was getting drafted like in the 160s. So I had the players like in order how they flow, but not the order of how I had them rated on their teams, because I had Dell and Rice both being the best receivers on both of those teams. And I think I would, I'll end up being right on that, but I don't have enough Dell in the season long stuff where I have him a lot in the best ball, and I have Rice a ton in the best ball, and I have him in most of the season long. But so those spots, I think I got beat up in multiple spots, like a Ridley underperforming. A short schedule. If you had Metcalf in the FFPC, it's 12 weeks to qualify to playoffs. Shows up this week. Well, where was it last week? Where was it the week before? Why can you put two games together? So he's the this week I have a team in RT Sports that's going to be in the championship round, is most points, best record, or in that thing. But you have forced to play Geno because I had Cousins who got hurt, which is fine. Right. He had a bye week, and it was, it would have had to have been a forced play, even if Cousins there. Had Metcalf, had Lamb, had the kicker from Dallas. Team's got like 115 points with four guys or something like that. And, but you want that week in weeks, 15 in the playoffs, you know what I mean? So did it come a week early? Who knows what the rest of the players do for the rest of the week? But now you need, 2 or 3 more weeks like that to happen to kind of make a run. But, ultimately you got to get to the dance before you can, start, making a push for a title. So I would say that order of decision-making was off. Didn't draft enough at the back end where I could take like the Lamb and, AJ Brown paired together. I have them in 2 or 3 spots together. And those are good teams, because you could get Gibbs and ETN in the next round. So, depending on when you're drafting, there was definitely a minefield up front for wide receiver, middle of the round, the running back with Eckler. So, I mean, it's hard to get it all right. And, you just kind of have to, put the whole package together. And I think Jeff has left the building, so I am technically in charge of the show right now. Oh, he is. He paid his bill, and Jeff is back with me. So, yeah. So that's definitely interesting.
Can you hear me, Shawn? I am frozen. My picture is frozen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and yeah.
Okay. Okay. My picture froze. Yeah. That back end again, and you were. We talked backstage, but in my head right now, the AJ Brown CD Lamb combination is the combination that we wanted there. You talked about Tank Dell. I have them everywhere. So there's your core there. We talked backstage. I got 4 running backs averaging 18 points. I got Mozart, I got Montgomery, I got Gibbs, those 3, and I got ETN. And in the NFFC, you only can start 2, and then you can use 1 in the flex if you want there. Other than McCaffrey, those 3 backs have been serviceable. You had a flash and fade get hurt with an A chain. He's back again. Think of some backs other than McCaffrey and those that I listed that are maybe rising and rounding into form or that were fades.
Well, Bijan Robinson's on the move. Brian Robinson had a couple of good games. Had a game a couple of weeks ago that was impactful, better than expected, especially when he cut, a couple passes in the passing game, ended up with 6 for 119 and a touchdown, something like that against Seattle. Jalen Warren's moving forward. The Pittsburgh has really run the ball really, really well the last 4 weeks. And even though they're splitting it, both the backs are playable. One of them could be at the flex. You'd like to see a few more catches. And if they throw the ball like they did last week, there will be the offense in general will be better in Pittsburgh and score more touchdowns. Kyron Williams, missed all those games, and there he goes, comes off the mat and has an impact game. He's the best running back of the week last week. So that's, kind of the players up top are, they got to kind of be on good teams to create scoring chances. I mean, the Colts, Jonathan Taylor was on the move, and I don't know when he got hurt in that game, but I mean, they were definitely using him different than we thought last week, but he still, end up getting close to 20 points with 2 touchdowns. But But Zach Moss, gets the job now, and we'll see if people can bridge that guy, and maybe Taylor will be back for the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, the fantasy playoffs. We'll see.
Yeah, Karen Williams, that was a real gut punch for us in our prime time where we were tied for first in head-to-head record after losing 2 in a row. Of course, magically appears against the team that we're facing, and he puts them in, of course, and puts up the monster week, and was the difference of us winning and losing last week there. You talk about it, and the hard part for people to understand that don't participate is the fact of the matter is it's a 14-week marathon in the regular season, and anything can happen once you get into the dance. The overall leader out of the 4,500 teams might have a 20-point lead off of you because they take the 14 weeks and they average it out. So he might be averaging 160 a week. You might have averaged 143 a week. So you start the three-week race, 15 through 17, only 17 points back. My best online team right now is 191st. I talked to you this morning about it. We have a big-time quarterback with Josh Allen. We have 2 upside wide running backs with Pacheco and quietly Rashard White averaging almost 16 points a game. We have the CeeDee Lambs. We have the Ayuks. We played Cook last night. We have Hawkinson at tight end. So again, it's not what you do the first 14 weeks. It's to get in that dance, and then everyone starts with a clean slate, whether you're on the lid or you're down 15, 18, 20 points. In 2017, Shawn, as you know, we started 347th out of 512 teams, 25 points back. We put up 225 the first week in the playoffs, and the rest was history.
Yeah, that 3-week run, especially if you have first week and if you can pop a 2-something, that'll really kind of set you up where you're kind of excited. But ultimately, over the 3-game stretch, you probably need to score at least 500 points minimum, depending on the format, maybe even a little higher than that. Even with your season average added into that, you might be, you end up maybe 700 points you need. So it's definitely a fun time of year. Especially I drafted, a bunch of teams for best ball, and, a lot of them are bad for, for DraftKings and Underdog, but some of them teams could be okay. There's so many teams I can't look at it, but, in week 15, there's going to be action in those games. And those are survival, win your week and move on. You don't necessarily have to have the best score of the week other than week 17. So we'll see if we can kind of together, because technically you could be, I've already drafted teams in like a best ball format. You could technically be a millionaire and you don't even know it because it hasn't played out, because you have no control. You have no mistakes in decision-making. It's just going to play out how it is. You have nothing. You have no idea. So, and you could even have one team that make it out of how many, and that team just has the right piece of the puzzle, stayed healthy and right matchups, and it just kind of gets it done. So, and the other things that where you got for the season long, we have to make decisions. If you have like 2 extra players, one good running back, good receiver, and even a couple defenses, you're open to making the wrong call. Hopefully you're not. I know that I was with Kimmer one year, and I had a bunch of teams, and I had Derrick Henry on a third of the teams. He wasn't anything special for the first, I think that was when we played 16 games, first 13 weeks of the season, maybe averaged 11 points or so, playing on like a Thursday night game against Jacksonville was pretty good against running backs. He put 44 points. If I would have played him on one team that day, that team would have won the overall. But I missed out on 44 points. Played him the next week, get 20-something, maybe 11. But you need that separator score, and sometimes you just don't know where it's going to come from. And over-managing is easy to do. And I think Chris Godwin was the player that I played, and I think he got like 2 points. And he was a good, on-the-rise receiver for Tampa. So you just it's frustrating when you get that stuff wrong.
Before we get into the Millies this week, we got a lot of people watching and listening. I was just looking at the bottom of the screen here. Justin Herbert, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. I see Jamar Chase and Christian McCaffrey there. And the Jamar Chase rung a bell. This year, more quarterbacks injured than ever. There's like 25% of the whole league that is in their second or third string. I mean, I think Cleveland will be wheeling out Flacco this week. That's how desperate some of these teams have gotten. The Boyles of the Jets. When we were drafting early in the year, we knew Burrow was nicked up, but we still grabbed Chase early. T. Higgins, I'll use the word, it's been a damn bust. He's a trash. He just never plays. He's too inconsistent. Yeah, I said it. But my point is the studs. You told me day one, you always play your studs no matter what. There's no Revis Island out there. My question to you is, Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase. There's a couple more of those stud wide receivers with second and third string quarterbacks. What do you do there, Shawn?
I mean, you just have to stick with it, the talent, and hope they get. I mean, Chase last week I think he had 12 points, and as bad as Garrett Wilson has been for the Jets, I think that on a consistency factor, he has scored between 10 and 19 points in a lot of his games. So hasn't been the difference maker because he doesn't score touchdowns, but he's been relatively consistent where at least he helps you. He might be feel like you were getting a wide receiver 3 and you drafted a wide receiver 2 or 1 with him, depending on, if you went wide receiver back to back. But, there is a chance Aaron Rodgers is going to play, right? He's going to save the Jets season. They're going to run the table. But no, you have to play your best players, and most likely Chase and Wilson will get the most targets. And once in a while there's a matchup that's unfavorable, but you just never know when they're going to get hit on a long bomb. And, you're going to put in, some second tier or third tier receiver. I mean, I had them, I had Ridley kind of quiet in a few leagues a couple of weeks ago. Second round pick. You got Rice from Kansas City coming on. Thought he would do a little bit more. Somebody else I had in the mix, but I had added depth, and I sat Ridley. After being really quiet, and he has that first big game. Of course, I have him last week, but that 30-point game that I have, if I have him, was that enough in a couple of leagues to get me to the playoffs? And did I overmanage? Probably. Was I frustrated? Probably. But I think I had a question from the week before that. Scott Fleming had asked me in a probably shallow league. He had Ridley, and he said he was going to cut him. I said I wouldn't cut him. I don't know who's in the pool, but you just never know when these players cycle out and they end up kind of hitting their stride. We saw that last night with Metcalf kind of quiet. So if you got good players, you can sit them and play somebody else, but you rarely want to throw that player back in the free agent pool. So it's tough, Wilson and Chase, what are you going to do? They're good players, and you just need better quarterback play.
Last question. 8-chain owners. I'm a part of the Mozart 8-chain team. Just took a swing on Mozart in a handful of places. Loved 8-chain. Got ninged up. I don't have him in as many spots. Missed the 50-point week, whatever it was. Did catch a couple good weeks with him before he got hurt. Was on the IR, comes back. Of course, I run to the window. Second drive, he was a part of, out, gone. See ya. Misses the next 2 weeks. Came out today. He is playing. I know you're going to tell me, well, it depends upon the spots or whatever, and the people that got burned a couple weeks ago, but this is the second to last week, and they're playing Washington 10-point favorites. If you have him and you're swinging to get into the playoffs, don't you kind of sort of have to play him?
Yeah, and I mean, I probably had that similar example last week. I had a team in like a online championship in one format. I had like a 9-3 record. I was trailing the team in front of us by 50 points. I needed to win. I need to make up 50 points. I mean, I knew Justin Jefferson most likely wasn't going to play, but I had to take a chance, and I put him in lineup, and I didn't have another player technically lined up to play later. And by late Sunday, you knew that he wasn't going to play, but I didn't have somebody at 4:00 to put in. So I ended up taking a loss, 125 to 133. I would have won, but I still would have made the playoffs. So I had to take the chance that he played, because I needed somebody who could get, a big game. And, he falls into that category. Even Mostart's been pretty good, kind of relying on touchdowns now. He hasn't made as many big plays, and he's definitely not catching the ball as much. Like I said earlier, Tyreek Hill's kind of been working out of the backfield. He's almost like a running back on some plays. That's how they gets those extra 2 or 3 catches to, not pad his stats, but, they want him to get the ball because he's the best playmaker. So, but, if you have him, I think you got to ride him. 2 weeks ago was a little sketchy with him, and he looked a little banged up. But, hopefully that knee's not an issue or whatever was bothering him, and he's can provide some excitement again against Washington, because that's a pretty good matchup. Miami, I have Tyreek Hill rated off the chart, and if, A-Chain can play, that team might score, 35, 40 points, and then I think Washington will be, throw the ball and, at least produce some stats on the other side.
All right, so let's get to the Millie. A couple weeks left. You're still alive. Obviously, yesterday's game, so there's no Cowboys, there's no Seattle. The 8:20 game on Sunday is Kansas City and the Packers, so no Mahomes, no Kels, no Pacheco, whoever you might have used on the Green Bay side. And then the Monday night game, Cincinnati and Jacksonville. So no Trevor Lawrence, no ETN, no Ridley, no Jamar Chase. So looking at the 1 o'clock slate, Chargers, Patriots, I don't know what to say. 2 teams that have obviously disappointed. My thoughts about Justin Herbert. Watching that game last week, I think Allen had 15 targets, 14 catches. But what really disappointed me was it didn't look like he had anyone else to throw to there. The Patriots starting Bailey Zappi, just been a dumpster fire there. Detroit coming off a loss on Thanksgiving, traveled to New Orleans. No Michael Thomas. I don't know if Olave will be there for Detroit. They look pretty healthy there with the 2-headed monster with Montgomery and Gibbs there. Atlanta at the Jets. Under overs down to 33. I don't think he'll be anywhere near that game. Arizona travels to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, first week with the new OC. Pickett almost 300 yards. We thought it would be Pickett to Pickens and Deontay Johnson. A lot of Frymouth over there. You talked about the emergence of Jalen Warren. Kyler Murray, sneaky. He's been playing a lot better. No Michael Wilson. That came out this afternoon there. And what else? Indy at Tennessee, Derrick Henry. You spot on your write-up on last Sunday. The apples and oranges from the road to home, scores a couple times last week there. Miami and Washington. There's the Sam Howell versus Tua. Under over of 50 or 49.5, 10-point favorites. So I think a lot of eyes will flock there. Then here's the other one. Denver at Houston. Under over 47.5. Houston favored by 3. C.J. Stroud, Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Tank Dell, Nico Collins. The question mark with Dalton Schultz. On the other side, Denver, winners of 5 in a row. Cooking with Russ. The number 1 wide receiver over there, Cortland Sutton. Running game, Javante hasn't found the end zone, but is chugging along. There's your 1 o'clock slate. Anything pique your interest there for the Millie?
I think it's almost like, when you're handicapping, it's the same as like the horse racing the dogs. When you're handicapping the field, sometimes you got the favorites, sometimes you see the underdog, and, you try to, but ultimately, whatever the board is, you're trying to put the best team together to win. And, regardless of the payout, and in this particular case, you're trying to win $1 million, so it doesn't really matter. But if you're playing favorites in the top players, it's a little more difficult to put the team together. So I think it's pretty straightforward that, at the top end of the wide receiving pool, it's Tyreek Hill. I have him projected for 2 touchdowns. Washington allows 15 yards a catch. They've given up a ton of receiving yards, 18 touchdowns. Quarterbacks have tossed for 28. It's in Washington. Their defense is suspect, and in Miami, is dynamic at throwing the ball, and if A-Chain can add to the running game, it's going to be even more explosive. So I think that it starts pretty much straightforward at the Hill, and I think that because it's going to be a chaser game, I can't dismiss that Tua throws 3 or more touchdowns and gets his 300 yards and stuff like that and has an impact game. But I think Miami runs the ball well enough where they'll steal a touchdown or possibly 2 on the ground. So I can't say for sure that, I want to pay that price point. But Howell is a guy that when I do the second round of projections, I have him at, he's 6,200, 286 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 14 yards rushing. So they've thrown the ball over 40 times, like 4 or 5 games in a row, or 5 out of the last 6. The attempts are there. Their receivers. This almost reminds me of last year when I was going to the DraftKings final in New Orleans. Is who's hot, who's getting chances, and Tom Brady wasn't throwing touchdown passes, but he was completing like 30 passes a game. And his receivers had chances. So I had the Brady combination, which was right. It gave me a chance to win. I just didn't hook up the right running back. So I think Howell, he is going to throw the ball a ton. I think Miami has a little more risk on defense so that his receivers in play. So, McLaurin is going to face the 2 outside receivers, Ramsey, and Ramsey's been seven catches at 19 targets, 66 yards, 3 interceptions, been pretty good. But we've seen in the last couple of years that Ramsey is a one-on-one. He can get beat once in a while over the top for bigger touchdowns. So I think McLaurin, he's going to be really sneaky. He has 14 100-yard games over the last 100-yard games, or first 4 years in the league. He has none this year. Could hit on a big play, hasn't done it. He's going to kind of sit there. He's on the opposite side. It makes a ton of sense. And when you're looking at the matchup, it actually favors Curtis Samuel because their slot cornerback coverage out of Miami isn't as good. So I could see him being a possibility, see Dotson being a possibility. And I'm definitely in the camp of the tight end there because he's 3,500. And I think between garbage catches and stuff like that, he could get 14 points in some fashion, get you a touchdown, less yards or something like that. But there's a lot of completions going around there. So I think that 2 Washington players are going to come in that are going to be relatively cheap, and the quarterback. So it's going to start with Howell, Hill. I'm going to use McLaurin, and I'm going to use one of his other 3 receivers, mix it in. You go to the running back position. Carolina's been pretty bad against the running backs all year. 6 or 7 teams have scored 2 rushing touchdowns, and I know Tampa doesn't score a bunch of rushing touchdowns, and it's too bad last week against the Colts because they were at the goal line. And Mayfield, tries to sneak it and gets hurt. First and goal at the 1-yard line. You can't give your running back a chance to score a touchdown. So he could have had a pretty good game there, and he still got 100 yards for the first time and 15 for 100. Only a couple of catches. I thought he would catch a few more balls, but he was in line for a lot better game. This matchup is pretty favorable for him. He's still 6,300. He based on opportunity, 18 touches a game. He kind of really fits in, makes a lot of sense based on price. McCaffrey's playing a tough defense. Philly's giving up only a couple touchdowns. Kamara's overpriced how he's done lately. I got Breece Hall rated pretty good, but Atlanta hasn't given up a rushing touchdown to a running back all year, 4 to the quarterback. But doesn't mean that Hall doesn't break a run because he's pretty explosive. Eckler's high up against New England, kind of a grinder game. Who knows? ETN's been going sideways. Bijan Robinson moving up. Brian Robinson in the mix in this game. We can't dismiss a Washington running back but he's a little higher. He's 6,100. He's not that bad. But the other running back that you think that is going to be very popular and playing favorites again is Jaylen Warren. He kind of quiet last week. Was really good 2 or 3 weeks ago in a row. Broke a big play to set up the week before. Got 100 combined yards. He probably got over 300 yards in 3 straight weeks. So I think playing at home against Arizona, where we saw or Kyron Williams do last week, I think Warren is going to score a touchdown. I think he's going to get 20 points. I think he's going to, be in the – I can't dismiss that Najee Harris doesn't, outplay him and whatever, and I can't dismiss him. So one of the Pittsburgh running backs for sure. I think the crowd is going to gravitate towards Moss because of price, and I think the matchup isn't great. I think he had an explosive game the last time he played Tennessee, which is going to – draw excitement, but at 4,600, he still could get 13 fantasy points, 14, which would be an okay game. But if he doesn't score a touchdown, he doesn't pay off. But because he's so cheap, I can't eliminate him. So, you're pretty much playing, a favorite with White. You're playing a favorite with Warren. You're playing a favorite with him. You got the favorite stack. You got a lot of pieces that are the favorites. But, what are you going to use at tight end? who are you going to use at your maybe your extra receiver or tight end flex position, depending on how you set it up with the wide receivers, and then what are you going to use at defense? The Jets look okay, and I think that Pittsburgh's defense against Arizona playing at home, if they play from the lead, that could be favorable. So it's interesting, and then the Pittsburgh receivers are relatively cheap. One of them could hit on a play and score. So I mean, I kind of know where I want to go this week. But I also know that I'm going to have a lot of friends, with the same opinion.
Well, and again, we don't play Monday morning quarterbacks here. We're talking Friday at almost 2:00 back east here. A lot of things could change. Weather could be a big factor. Late scratches, ads, and every week we seem to have this same conversation. And I can tell you, Shawn, I love where your eyes are. I think this sets up, Washington sold their defense. No Montez Sweat, no Chase Young. This is, a Miami team that played on Black Friday, so they had a couple extra days off. This is a perfect spot for them, and Washington definitely should be chasing. But every week we seem to talk about C.J. Stroud. We talked about Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and this also looks like, even though it's a 47.5 as well. I know you do a lot of lineups, but can't you also see yourself gravitating to that game, Denver and Houston?
The Houston game, I mean, they've been phenomenal at home. This would be their fourth home game over 5 weeks, and I had Stroud in that first game, which should have been a big hit, because he wasn't as popular. But if his receivers are a little banged up, that is a factor. Dell's got a little calf issue. I know if Noah Brown is, I haven't followed the news as close today. I was doing some writing. If Brown could crawl on the field, that would be helpful. Collins looks good. But the tight end Schultz doesn't play. That kind of changes stuff. So it's always when you're looking at these things, do they have all the pieces to the offense and are they healthy? So if Dell's fine, if Schultz plays, I'm going to gravitate him. But on the downside is Stroud is a lot more expensive than he was before. So he needs 30-some points. Dell's 7,400. I have him rated as the second highest receiver, and he probably would have hit on it last week if would he have like a 69-yard catch, get called back from some, illegal man downfield or something like that, which is a strange call from the goal line. But he would have got his 26 or 27 points last week if he would have hit on that one play. But Denver's really a kind of a one-trick pony. It seems like passing the ball. Sutton's the only guy that he scores and does some stuff, but he doesn't make big plays. They played a lot of games at home. Russell Wilson, when you look at his touchdown to interception ratio, has been pretty good. But there's enough flaws in that offense where they don't look explosive. Give up a lot of sacks on third down when they got to make plays. So it's potentially Denver's kind of felt like they've kind of made teams be like more grinders of late. So I could see Dell being a factor. I could see Collins being a factor. Not sure if I can afford them. I do think on the other side of the thing that one of the 49ers receivers could land on the ticket, because if Philly can score, they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. Ayuk's been pretty impressive when given a chance, but he doesn't get, rarely does he have over 6 targets a game. If the guy could ever have 12 targets, he's has upside. So, and same thing with Kittle. Kittle had 3 20-point games in a row, kind of a clunk last week. This week, they're playing against Philly. I think they have the worst secondary in the league, or worst covering wide receivers anyway. So I think that it's more of like a Philly piece might fit. I know that Houston makes sense, and that Denver thing doesn't, possibly, but I guess I'm, kind of more in a fade in that category, or that game this week. It's kind of it's different for me because of the salaries.
Shout out to Kenny Magna. He goes, love seeing the dog and the mayor. What a start for Kenny, Shawn. Dak, CeeDee Lamb, DK, and the Dallas kicker. He says, great start to the NFC Week 13. Keep up the great work, boys. Sack needs a little Kenny Pickett love with Josh Allen off. I think you're going to get a Kenny. New OC seems a lot more comfortable. We need less Pat Frymouth, a little more Pickett to Pickens. Deontay Johnson to pull his head out of his what, to play 60 minutes. And I think you should have a good game from the Steelers there. The 4:00 games you talked about. Go ahead.
Wait, did he buy a Browning jersey? That's all I want to know. I mean, he has to let the the Joe Burrow jersey. That's too bad. Great Cincinnati fan, really close. Kind of been a frustrating year for him. But Kenny, they'll be back. They'll be back. I don't know if T. Higgins will be back, but they'll be back.
Oh, let T go. Let him be someone else's player. For sure. The 4:00 slate, you talked about the Philly San Fran, obviously the headliner. That under over now, Shawn, is up to 48. Cleveland is at the Rams. It sounds like Stafford versus Flacco, what I'm hearing. You talked about Karen Williams earlier on the show there. Jerome Ford on the other side. Under over was 38. That's up to 40.5. And then the other game we talked about, Carolina and Tampa. So in other words, it's been the back end, Shawn. It's been the 1:00 games have been slow starts, other than a CJ Stroud in Houston, it seems. And then the back end, we've got our glory. You got a couple opportunities to really dig in deep and swing hard at the 1:00s. But do you see people saying, "Hey, I'll let that train wreck hopefully go"? Could you dig in on San Fran and Philly? Could you find a way to get the game flow going there? It's a 47.5, 48. Both teams scoring on that game.
It's too hard to get. It's too hard to put like 3 or 4 pieces together in that game because their prices are so expensive, especially the receivers. So then what happens if you pay those high end players up front, especially with a quarterback? For Philadelphia Hurts, you're really compromising the back end, and you really need multiple chances that you need 2 $4,000 players or 1 $3,000 player to hit, and maybe that $3,000 player this week is A.T. Perry. If I don't think Shaheed plays for New Orleans, and Olave's kind of banged up, so this he could come out of nowhere. Even Lynn Bowden or whatever, if he gets more playing time, a couple surprises for the Saints, but. It's hard to put that puzzle together. When you're looking at, and you mentioned the Rams, though, who's the guy that could potentially beat you? Cooper Kupp, $7,800. He's had, 5 kind of worthless games for the fantasy market for him. 3 down games, an injury, and last week, nothing. But the running back kind of dominated. So he's going to be a guy like you're sick of looking at, because his catch rate and everything is out of line for what he's done for the previous, 30-something games or whatever he did, but he's sitting there and you're not taking him, and he's the guy that could potentially put up a 30 plus because he does have that kind of talent. Is he healthy? I'm not sure. The ankle is an issue. Quarterback's the same. I don't know. Maybe, Kyron Williams being back in the field, that offense has been a lot better with him playing. So he's the guy that could kind of, be concerned that he could come off the board and, you want a piece of him late, if the price point fits. But Tampa, Godwin doesn't score. I think he's got 2 touchdowns, probably the same as their third receiver, Trey Palmer. But Evans potentially, he makes the big plays. They look from the goal line. He has multiple touchdown upside. Carolina, they fire their head coach this week. They don't play good against running backs. They're playing on the road. I don't know. So that's you think what I just think White's the guy there, and maybe Evans is a consideration. Carolina, not so much. Maybe actually Thielen. Hey. I can't dismiss that Thielen. He's 6,600. He's been lost and found. He's priced too high, where he gets a another active role because he can catch all that underneath stuff against Tampa. And he's rated pretty good for me this week, but I'm not sure that he fits what I'm doing.
Hey, Kenny, if you're still here, the Circa must be listening to our show as we were speaking about the Pittsburgh Steelers in Arizona right in front of my eyes as we speak. they moved the Pittsburgh Steelers up to 6.5. So Jeffrey Benson, Derek Stevens, I know you're listening. So yes, we expect Pickett to Pickens and a bunch of other scores over there for you, Kenny. It'll be an early Christmas present from the ECSI family. So kind of comical that just moved in front of our eyes here. Shawn, before we wrap this up, again, second to last week in the regular season. Next week, the final week of the regular season. Then hopefully a couple teams get in for the $250,000 3-week sprint. Geez, if I did what I did in 17 for that 200, it would now be worth almost 600,000 after all the bonuses and everything. Unfortunately, my classic team won't be in that dance anyways, and they're not appeared. It's the prime time, and I need a miracle to get in with the prime time. But talk a little. We got Hot Stove coming next week, Shawn. The big prize is Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers are the favorite. Everyone, of course, is involved supposedly, but it sounds like that the Red Sox, Cubs, and Rangers might have left the building there. Yamamoto, the Japanese young pitcher coming over. There's some big names still out there. You've done some projections. You've done some works. What are you doing right now in the baseball market, even though we're still trying to wrap up the football market?
I'm trying to get some work done before I'm kind of in transition. So I've gone through, I pulled all the final stats from the NFBC, for the targets and, look at the data to see how people finished in the standings and stuff like that. I put that together to do that fantasy points gained, those scores that I use to kind of rate players. I kind of want, it gives me a way to see how that player, came out last year as far as, what they were worth, like Ronald Acuna, if you drafted him on your team and you got the average stats for all the other positions, offensive positions, and you added him to your team, you would gain 20 points in the standings. Pretty impactful. Probably highest I've seen. A couple of years ago, I think Verlander and one other pitcher, I can't remember who it was. They were plus 16 on the pitching side, were dominating. And, but he was plus 20, but the rest of the, the top players were maybe 11 or so. And none of the pitchers, maybe only one pitcher was a plus 10. It was kind of a Daniel year of pitching. So that kind of sets up, so you get instant gratification because you know what a player was worth. But at the same time, you could have a player like the Lewis guy from Minnesota who has a, whatever score. He could have a -3 for limited at bats and stuff like that because he only played like, say, a third of the season. But, you could convert that, his stats to, 500 at bats, and then you could get another number if I wanted to. But some of that's not fair because if a guy's hot for a short period of time, most likely he's not going to be, hot for the whole season, but you can get a baseline of what he can potentially do. And you also have the ability to compare that information for what his ADP will be. So if he's getting drafted in the third round now, and he was, you think he's going to be a 30, 100, 300 hitter, you have to decide, can that guy stay healthy, kind of banged up a little bit. So I pulled out all the information, got those scores. I went over a couple of articles to strategy articles for average hit rate, which is, gives me a good look of what somebody is for power. You want somebody over 2.0 to be like a really 35, 40 home run. But basically, if you're 1.75, gives you, if they get 500 bats, then good chance they're going to hit 30 plus home runs. And then you see a guy in the minors, he's got 15 home runs and a bunch of at bats, and you think that guy can hit 20. But if his average hit rate's like a 1.35, it's really a flawed number. So same thing with contact batting average. A guy that strikes out a ton, people will shy away from him because of strikeouts. But if he hits well over 400 and he strikes out 150 times or 27%, he can overcome that by putting the ball more in play or hitting it for a higher average. So I think it's a better indication for me than batting average balls in play, which people is standard. I think they discount home runs, so I don't respect that stat at all. And it's just me, the way I look at it. I'm kind of looking for that as to identify some hitters that can kind of break out, and that has helped me over the last few years. I was way ahead of the curve on Alonso potentially being a lot better, and Yordan Alvarez, and I think I had Bellinger. When he had his breakout year, like I was all over him, and as a second round player, and him hitting that many home runs and steals was not a fluke for me. And then I just basically, last week, kind of updated a fantasy basics, kind of just give a feel for, what you're trying to do in fantasy baseball, trying to educate, kind of the new players, and kind of tie in some of the other thoughts with the fantasy points gain strategies and stuff like that. And so I'm trying to get those strategy articles down in front, maybe some of the projection stats, and then I'll leap into doing the write-ups for all 30 teams. Hopefully I'm in position for work where, I can support this and continue on, but we will see what happens on January 1st.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Two-part question. The first one's, I think, is a layup, but what do I know? Where will Shohei Ohtani land? And the next question, I already know your answer, but the people want to know. Give us your December 1st NFBC top 5 if you were drafting tomorrow or today.
Well, I mean, Acuna is a slam dunk for first overall. I think that Witt is right there. I'm drawing a blank now from from doing football. Witt is, because of the position eligibility. Betts qualifies at second base. He's a top 5 player. But Betts is kind of a trap a little bit because he had 39 home runs. You don't know if that's repeatable. You think he's going to have an edge in runs. He stole 14 bases. But he's, that player qualifying second is definitely interesting. Witt, 30, 49. How many players do that? His approach improved a lot. You're gaining edge at shortstop. Freddie Freeman is another player that's getting drafted really high. I think he had 23 steals last year. He only had 29 home runs, had a ton of at-bats, scored a lot of runs. His RBIs were strong, and he had 59 doubles, I believe. So, he's more of a line drive player, but he's in the right offense. Those steals at first base an advantage. But I think basically when you're looking at a player like that is like, okay, if I take him, what can I get in that second, third round at another position? And if you take, say, a Witt, what can I get at first base? Like, say, if you can get Witt and Alonso compared to Freeman and, I'll just say Lindor, but it's not, it's not that player. But I'm saying you have to kind of look at those comparisons and do them as pairs, and you have to understand the likelihood of that player being there. And the other player, I can't even think of it right now because, like I said, I was like looking at it. Right now, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't thing. But obviously Rodriguez from Seattle, is going to get drafted high, but I think he's going to dip back a little bit because he kind of struck out a little bit more. But he, was close to being a 30-30 player. Played his best ball late in the year. But, you can't dismiss like a Strider or a pitcher, jumping up there too, because, Cole and him, they were kind of the impactful guys, and how many aces you can actually trust this year. But at some point, these aces can get hurt and break down as well. Why did Strider, have those struggle outings where his ERA was a lot higher than the year before, even though the strikeouts were phenomenal. So, it just, stuff like that. And, like I said, it's a whole set of different analytics there and drafts, and the ADPs get set in early in the year by they get set by, I don't want to look at it negatively, but they get set by people that are they're excited about the player pool. They get used to players going in a certain way, and they kind of draft that way. And so some of the players get moved up and some get discounted, whereas in March 1st, when the veteran players or getting towards the main event, they come and they just wreck the ADPs. Spring training comes and they move the players all around who they want, because some of the early people don't respect speed. They probably respect it more this year because there's so much of it. But speed, they didn't expect low average power or some other positions. For various reasons, the ADPs from now until March, to me, are kind of irrelevant. yeah, they're having fun. They're building their teams and stuff like that. And maybe the best teams can come out early in the year. But, when you draft in early, you're also going to take on some injuries a little bit more than March 1st. But when March 1st comes around, people bet their opinion on their best players, and that's what changes a lot. And, unfortunately, I had a good year 2 years ago with you, and we had some teams that were competitive, got a lot of pitching right and some of the hitting. Last year, I got some of the pieces to offense, but I really had a lot of issues with the pitching staff, and it would end up being a bad year. I lost at 13,000 in. I won 11,900 back, which is pretty good, but most of it came in a best ball format. So I would take close to a break even year, and a down year is okay. But your goal here is to win an overall. We're not playing here to win leagues. You want to win leagues to survive like that, but we're playing to win the overall, and that means you got to get a lot of players right, and you got to have a good opinion of a lot of stuff and understand draft flow. So, so that's what's baseball's right around the corner, and it's pretty whole different game, but I look forward to it as well.
The second question was, where do you think Shohei lands? But my question, you were looking for the number 5 guy. Obviously, the fact that Shohei will not be able to pitch next year. What is Shohei's ADP in the top of your head? Is he still a first round guy?
He'll be in the first round. I mean, he did enough last year, and he's going to hit and stuff like that. Stole some bases and stuff like, yeah. He's still going to go there, but he's still, the DH thing is a factor. I mean, if he goes to the Dodgers, you put him in the middle of that lineup or even at the top of it, he's going to add, a lot more potential. I mean, who did the Angels have in the lineup with him? Trout, who was hurt, had no supporting gas. It's just a whole different world for him over there. So if he ends up with the Dodgers, I haven't thought about it too much. I just kind of let those things play out. I figure most people can't afford him, because he would command, and obviously the injury to, not being able to pitch, maybe gets him a better price, but pretty good marketing guy. Think he said he wanted to go to Seattle, but, if you can go to Seattle or LA, compared to where his homeland is, it's relatively close. A lot more money in that town for even endorsements and stuff like that. So you're probably right. Dodgers, I don't know. Somehow they just kind of, get these best players, to go there, and they, spend a ton and be able to afford it. They're actually, they're the next generation Yankees without the maybe the results in a bunch of World Series titles, but they're right there, and they find the players, and they don't find the big players. They find the Muncies and some other players, the Chris Taylors, the complementary players as well. So they're good at both sides. They get the key front end players, but Dodgers really need to build the front end of their pitching staff too again, because last year it kind of went sideways. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting where he lands. I don't really try to put too much time thinking about it. Just see what happens. All I know is I want the Red Sox to end up with Bellinger, my guy.
It'd be kind of comical when you think about it. I want to see him. For some reason, I have a love affair with the San Fran Giants. I would love to see him end up at the San Fran Giants, start over, the new Barry Bonds, Godzilla over there. They haven't been relevant in a while. But Shawn, think about this. Betts, Ohtani, Freeman, 1, 2, 3. They didn't re-sign JD Martinez, but I think they did sign someone, though, I thought, to replace JD Martinez. But that would be a pretty crazy top 3 there. So can't thank you enough. As we always wrap up here, Shawn, tell everyone where they can find your work for literally, guys, 30 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, I'm Twitter, Shawn _Childs, or X, or whatever you want to call it, or FU by Elon Musk to the advertisers. But full-time fantasy, my content gets put there, and I also post it also on fantasyanalyst.substack.com. I'm trying to build an audience there where for football and baseball, and you get emailed all the articles, and if you click on my picture on that, and you can go to the website. So, trying to get that out there. Got to be a little more active. I know that we were a little late in football, but in baseball, I think that, kind of have a little more talking, maybe like a podcast format. We're a little longer than this, talk about players and teams and stuff like that, and try to add another layer to it. Even, I think the video stuff's pretty good with it, so I expect to be a little more active. That would help push this along. And we know that we lose more than we win. And as I said on my Twitter thing, we try to gain experience on the way and along the way, and hopefully get better at making decisions. And sometimes you make decisions and they end up having injuries, but you make them for the right reasons. And, you got to be able to take your losses and, and hopefully the wins are more than the losses, and you can, be profitable. And I mean, I've been playing this for 20 years and, or since 2004 in the high stakes market, and I've hung in there pretty good and been competitive and had chances. I haven't won the overall, but I did have that one big day in the DFS. So, kind of a win there and, helpful, but you need more of those, especially if you're going to play at the level that we are.
The one and only Shawn Childs. Shout out to everyone that watched and listened. We had dozens upon dozens of live viewers. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to my cousin Debbie and Toby, Big City, Kenny Magner, just to name a few. We love you guys. Thank you so much. At 3:30, myself and Matt Grissom, 3 Men in the Box, will be talking some college football. And then at 5 o'clock, our weekly trip to L.A. with Ron Marmolevsky, talking some analytics and data in college football, championship week, and the NFL. So from myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one and only Shawn Childs, the Hall of Famer, NFFC, NFBC at Shawn_Childs. We wish everyone a great afternoon. See you guys in about an hour 15. See you soon.